Caroline had always believed in watching quietly before speaking. She was the kind of woman who noticed small things others often missed. The change in someone's voice when they were nervous. The pause before a lie. And more recently, the way her husband David looked at Maya. Maya wasn't just some stranger. She was Caroline's new coworker. The firm had brought her in from the Chicago office, smart, soft-spoken, and easy to like. Maya had something about her that didn't scream for attention, but people noticed her anyway. Caroline did too, so when Maya mentioned she needed a temporary place to stay, her apartment was under emergency repair. Plumbing issues, Caroline, without hesitation, had offered their guest room. She even smiled about it. "It's just for a couple of weeks," she told David later that evening. "She's sweet. You'll like her." And David did. Maybe too much. The first night Maya came over with her suitcase, David was helpful, kind. He lifted her bag with a quiet charm that Caroline had always loved. They laughed about how heavy it was, and Maya apologized. It was all normal, polite, friendly. But at dinner, something shifted. Caroline caught it out of the corner of her eye, the way David listened a little more closely than usual. The way his eyes followed Maya when she spoke. Not inappropriate, just ... invested. It was a look she hadn't seen in a long time. And it wasn't directed at her. That night, after Maya had gone to her room, Caroline lay in bed next to David, staring at the ceiling fan, turning slowly. She didn't say anything. Not yet. In the following days, little things added up. Caroline noticed how David lingered in the kitchen longer when Maya made tea. How he asked about her job, her hometown, her favorite movies. How he laughed more when Maya was in the room. It wasn't love. It wasn't even obvious flirtation. But it was something, and Caroline, being who she was, didn't confront. She observed. She tried not to let it get to her. After all, people connect in small, innocent ways. It's natural, and Maya never gave her a reason to worry. She was kind, respectful, and never overstepped. If she noticed David's attention, she never showed it. But one Sunday morning, everything became clear. They were all in the kitchen, the smell of coffee in the air, sunlight spilling through the windows. Caroline was scrolling through her phone, David at the counter. Maya sitting at the table in her soft blue sweater. They were talking about music, about old jazz records. Maya's eyes lit up when she mentioned an artist she loved. "I haven't heard that in years," David said, clearly excited. "I used to play that in college." Their eyes met, and stayed there a moment too long. Caroline put down her phone. It wasn't jealousy she felt. It was something deeper, something more complicated. It wasn't about betrayal. It was about the quiet realization that David hadn't looked at her like that in a very long time. That evening, Caroline and David sat on the patio with their wine glasses, the sky a deep orange as the sun went down. "She didn't wait this time. She's beautiful," Caroline said, her voice calm. David looked at her, unsure. "Maya." Caroline nodded. "I see the way you look at her." David put his glass down. "Caroline, it's not like that." She raised her hand gently, stopping him. "You don't have to defend it. I'm not accusing you." He leaned forward. "Then what are you saying?" "I'm saying it's okay to notice someone. It's okay to feel something. What matters is what we do with it." David was quiet. Caroline sighed. "When was the last time we really looked at each other, David? Not just passing glances. I mean, really looked." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked down, then said softly, "It's been a while." There was no anger in her voice, no bitterness, only truth. "We've been on autopilot," she said. "I think we both know it." David nodded slowly. They sat there for a while, not speaking. The wind brushed through the trees. A car passed on the street in the distance. Caroline wondered if this was what the beginning of something new felt like. Not the end, but the moment just before something shifts. Later that night, Caroline stood outside Maya's bedroom door, unsure of what had led her there. She knocked gently. Maya opened the door, surprised. "Can we talk?" Caroline asked. "Of course." They sat on the edge of the bed, the room dimly lit by a bedside lamp. Maya looked nervous. Caroline smiled softly. I'm not here to ask anything of you. I just want to say, I've seen how close you and David have become. Maya's face turned pale. Caroline, I swear. No. She interrupted, calm and clear. You haven't done anything wrong. But I've seen it, and I think you have too. Maya lowered her gaze. I'm not angry, Caroline said, but I believe honesty can make space for healing, for growth, for whatever comes next. Maya finally looked up. What does that mean? It means I don't want silence between any of us. I don't want suspicion. If there's something here, whatever it is, I'd rather understand it than pretend it doesn't exist. Maya's voice was quiet. I never meant for this to happen. No, Caroline said. And I don't think you even know what this is. None of us do. But that doesn't mean we can't name the shift. Caroline stood. Let's take the pressure off. Let's be honest. That's all I'm asking. And with that, she left Maya's room. Later that night, she curled into bed next to David. He turned to her, surprised. Did you talk to her? He asked. I did, she replied. David was silent. Carolyn rested her head on the pillow. I'm not sure what's happening between the three of us. But I think we owe it to ourselves to talk about it. To face it together. David let out a breath. That scares me. It scares me too, she admitted. But I'd rather walk through it with my eyes open than lose something in the dark. David reached out, gently taking her hand. I don't want to lose you. Then don't, she whispered. In the quiet, they lay still. The distance between them a little smaller than before. In that moment, Caroline didn't know what the future held. She only knew that something had changed. And sometimes change doesn't mean destruction, it means discovery. She didn't have answers, but she had courage, and sometimes that's where love begins again. After that night, something in the house felt different. Not uncomfortable, but quieter, as if all three of them were waiting to see who would speak first. Caroline continued with her routine early mornings, black coffee, short walks around the neighborhood. Maya kept to herself more, clearly unsure of how to navigate the new tension that had grown between her, David, and Caroline. And David? He was present, but thoughtful, watching, waiting, reflecting. Caroline didn't regret what she had said. She had opened the door to honesty, not to create drama, but to make space for truth. Still, truth had its own weight, and it now sat gently on every shared meal, every passing glance in the hallway, every word spoken at the dinner table. 3 days after the conversation with Maya, Caroline came home early from work. The house was quiet. She heard soft voices coming from the living room. She paused at the corner of the hallway, not to eavesdrop, but to feel the moment. David and Maya were sitting on the couch. It's a few feet apart, but their body language spoke volumes. Maya was nervous, her hands folded tightly in her lap. David sat forward, elbows on knees, his tone calm. I don't know what to say to her, Maya said quietly. You don't need to explain yourself to me, David replied. She's not mad. She's trying to understand it. Maya exhaled. I don't even understand it. Caroline stepped into the room then, choosing presence over silence. You don't have to understand everything right now, she said gently. None of us do. They both looked up, surprised but not startled. Caroline walked over and sat in the armchair across from them. I know this isn't a normal situation, she said, voice steady. But life doesn't always play out in straight lines. Sometimes feelings surprise us. That doesn't make them wrong, Knit, just makes them real. Maya looked down. Caroline, I didn't come here with any intention. I admire you. I admire your marriage. Caroline smiled slightly. I believe you. That's why I trust you. David finally spoke. What do we do now? There it was, the real question. Caroline thought for a moment. We stop pretending. No games, no guessing. If there's something that needs to be said, we say it. To each other. Always. Maya looked up. Do you mean talk about this as a group? Caroline nodded. If we're going to live under the same roof for now, we need clarity. The days that followed were full of cautious honesty. Not dramatic confessions, but small, real conversations. One by one, they peeled back the layers of silence that had formed. David admitted he'd felt unseen lately, not unloved, but unnoticed. Life had gotten busy. The spark he once felt with Carolyn hadn't gone away, but it had dimmed under the weight of routine and time. Meeting Maya hadn't created something new. It had reminded him of something that had been missing. Maya, on her end, said she had felt drawn to the ease she felt around David not because she wanted something inappropriate, but because it was rare to meet someone she could talk to that openly, and Carolyn. She admitted she had sensed a distance growing for months. She had chosen not to confront it sooner because she had been afraid of what it meant. But now, sitting across from both of them, she realized fear had kept her in silence, and silence had cost her more than she realized. One night, the three of them cooked dinner together. It was almost normal chopping vegetables. Laughter slipping through the cracks of tension. Music playing softly in the background. After dinner, David offered to clean up. Maya went to her room. Carolyn stayed behind and joined David in the kitchen. "I meant what I said," she told him, drying a plate. "I'm not angry. I know," he said, stacking dishes. "But I still feel like I've failed you somehow." Carolyn looked at him. "You didn't. We both stopped showing up. You emotionally. Me emotionally and physically. We let the comfort of routine replace effort." David leaned against the counter. "I never wanted anything to happen. But something did." She nodded slowly. "It doesn't mean we've lost. It means we've reached a crossroads." David looked tired. "So which way do we turn?" Caroline smiled sadly. "That's what we figure out together." Later that evening, Maya knocked on Caroline's door. She stood there quietly, almost hesitant. "I just wanted to say thank you," she said softly, "for being graceful when you had every right not to be." Carolyn invited her in. "You don't have to thank me. I'm just trying to lead with truth. That's all I have left." Maya sat on the edge of the bed. "I think I need to move out soon. Not because of pressure, just because I don't want to be in the middle of something that's clearly still healing." Caroline understood, but part of her also felt something new, something she hadn't expected. Peace. This strange, emotional chapter hadn't destroyed anything. It had revealed what had been broken long before Maya entered the picture. And now they were slowly learning to repair it, not by pushing away the discomfort, but by learning from it. 2 days later, Maya packed her things. Caroline helped her fold clothes, and David carried the suitcase to the car. There were hugs. No tears, just gratitude. As the car pulled away, Carolyn turned to David. "Do you still feel something for her?" she asked. David didn't lie. "Yes, but not the way I feel about you. What I felt with her reminded me of the part of me I'd forgotten. But it's you I want to grow with, not escape from." Caroline looked out at the street. "That's all I needed to hear." That night they sat on the back porch again, just the two of them. No music, no wine, just the sound of the wind in the trees. "We've still got a long way to go." Caroline said, "I know," David replied. "But I want to try," she added. He reached for her hand. "Then let's try." It had been 2 weeks since Maya moved out. The house was quieter now, but not empty. If anything, it was filled with something new. Or maybe something old they had forgotten. Space. Space to breathe. Space to reflect. Space to feel each other again. Carolyn and David had started walking in the evenings. Nothing big. Just 30 minutes after dinner, around the block, sometimes holding hands, sometimes walking in silence. The quiet between them wasn't heavy anymore. It was restful. They didn't talk much about Maya now. Not because they were avoiding it, but because they had said what needed to be said. What was left was the work of returning to each other. And that was what they focused on. One evening, Carolyn stopped walking mid-step. She turned to David, her eyes calm. "Do you think we would have faced this if she hadn't come into our lives?" David looked up at the sky, thinking, "No, I think we would have stayed asleep, comfortable, distant." Caroline nodded. "It's strange, isn't it? How someone can walk into your life and shake the dust off everything. David smiled gently. She woke me up. But you brought me home. They kept walking. At night, they started cooking together again. They laughed at burned toast, argued over recipes, and turned the kitchen into a place of connection rather than routine. It wasn't perfect, but it was theirs again. Some evenings, Carolyn found herself replaying those weeks Maya lived with them. Not with regret, but with curiosity. She wondered what Maya felt now if she had found a new apartment. She thought about David, if she missed the little corner of life they had all briefly shared. But those thoughts didn't bring sadness anymore. Just understanding that one night they sat on the living room floor surrounded by photo albums. Old birthdays, family vacations, blurry Christmas mornings. Caroline picked up a photo from 10 years ago. The two of them smiling in the sun, holding hands, nothing fancy. Just simple joy. Do you remember this day? She asked. David looked over. Of course. That was the trip to Seattle. We got rained on 5 minutes later. She laughed. And you kept trying to eat that soggy sandwich. He grinned. And you've kept telling me I was stubborn. I still do. Their laughter softened into something quiet and sweet. I miss them, she said. Who? Us, back then. Before all the busyness. Before we got lost. David nodded. I miss them too. But I think we're finding our way back. She believed him. The next morning, David made breakfast, pancakes, slightly burnt, but made with care. Caroline sat at the table, sipping coffee, watching him. He looked different now. Not new, not changed. Just awake. You know, she said, people would probably think we were crazy for how we handled everything. He looked at her. Do you think we were? She shook her head. No, I think we were honest. And I think that saved us. He came over and sat beside her. It did. Over the following weeks, they kept rebuilding not just the relationship, but their home. They repainted the living room, cleaned out the basement, even started a small garden in the backyard. Caroline joked it was their version of therapy. Sometimes they stumbled. There were still moments of doubt, quiet insecurity, even brief sadness. But they talked about it. For the first time in years, they didn't pretend to be fine when they weren't. And that honesty, though sometimes painful, was healing. One Saturday afternoon, they invited a few friends over for dinner. Laughter filled the house. Caroline caught herself smiling more. David watched her, proud. There was no Maya in the room, no shadow hanging in the air. Just life moving forward. Later that night, after the guests had gone and the dishes were done, Caroline stood by the kitchen window. Looking out at the backyard, David came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. You were glowing tonight, he whispered. She leaned back into him. It felt good. It felt normal. He kissed the top of her head. We're getting there. She turned to him. Do you think we're stronger now? David thought about it. I think we're braver now, and that might be better. Caroline rested her hands on his chest. It's funny. I thought losing you would be the worst thing, but it turns out losing ourselves was worse. David pulled her close. Then let's not lose ourselves again. They stood there holding each other. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet promise. In the weeks that followed, Carolyn wrote in her journal again, something she hadn't done in years. She wrote about forgiveness, about growing older, about how love isn't always exciting or perfect or loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's complicated. Sometimes it's choosing the same person over and over. Even when it's hard. One entry read, we invited someone in, and in doing so, we found what we had forgotten. I don't think Maya broke us. I think she revealed the cracks. And I think love is what we pour into those cracks to make something stronger. David read that entry one evening. He didn't say anything. He just closed the journal, walked over to Carolyn, and kissed her hand. A few months later, they traveled to Seattle again. Same spot, same sandwich shop, same rain. But this time, they brought umbrellas. As they sat on a bench near the water, David turned to her. Do you think we'll ever tell this story to anyone? Caroline looked at him. Maybe one day. Not because we owe anyone an explanation, but because someone might need to hear it. He nodded. You should write it down. You always tell stories better than I do. She smiled. Maybe I will. And maybe she did. Not as a story about betrayal. Not as a scandal. But as a story about love. How it drifts. How it returns. And how sometimes it takes a stranger walking in the front door to remind to people how much they still want to stay. Emily Scott never thought her marriage would feel this quiet. 8 years in. She and David were more like roommates than husband and wife. The kind of couple who shared space, schedules, and meals, but rarely shared anything deeper. She couldn't even remember the last time they had a real conversation, not about bills or laundry, but about feelings, dreams, or even each other. They lived in a cozy home outside Seattle. From the outside, everything looked fine. Perfect, even. David worked in tech, long hours, big deadlines, always tired. Emily was a part-time art teacher and full-time questioner of where her life was going. She loved painting, but hadn't picked up a brush in months. The days just blurred together. Mornings became nights. Love became routine. And then, one quiet Sunday morning, as rain tapped softly on the windows, David said something that didn't make sense, not at first. You should talk to Ryan, he said casually. Sipping his coffee, Emily looked up from her toast. Ryan, your best friend Ryan. David nodded. Yeah, I think you two would get along. He gets it. Gets what? This, he said, gesturing between them. This space. This silence. He went through something similar after his divorce. I think he could help. Emily stared at him. She wasn't sure if he was being kind or careless. You want me to talk to your best friend about our marriage? I trust him, David said. And I trust you. That should have been comforting, but it wasn't. It felt strange to open, too easy. But at the same time, there was something honest in the way David said it. He wasn't angry. He wasn't blaming her. He was simply done trying. Later that day, Emily found herself looking up Ryan's number. They had met a few times over the years, birthdays, game nights, barbecues. He was tall, quiet, thoughtful, a photographer. Divorced 2 years ago, no kids. He had always seemed kind, but distant. A man who kept most of his thoughts tucked away behind calm eyes. She hesitated before sending a message. Hey, Ryan. David suggested we talk. I'm not even sure why. But if you're open to it, maybe coffee. The reply came quickly. Sure, I'd like that. Tuesday. Tuesday came faster than expected. They met at a quiet cafe downtown, the kind with soft lighting and warm wood tables. Emily arrived early, unsure of what she was even doing. She hadn't been alone with another man like this since college. Not like this. Not with this energy. Ryan arrived on time, wearing a simple black jacket and a calm expression. Emily, he said, smiling gently. Good to see you. They ordered drinks, sat down, and for a while, they just talked. Not about love or marriage or David, just about life. Art, his recent photo project. Her students. The weather. But under this surface, there was something else happening. A comfort, a pull. A kind of stillness that felt oddly alive. He didn't look at his phone once. He looked at her and he listened. Really listened. Like what she said actually mattered. Emily hadn't felt that in years. 2 hours passed before she realized it. She stood to leave, unsure how to say goodbye. Thank you, she said, for talking. I didn't expect this to feel so easy. Ryan smiled. It's nice, isn't it? Being heard. She nodded. When she got home, David didn't ask questions. He was on his laptop, half watching a show. Good coffee? He asked without looking up. Yeah, she said quietly. It was good. The next few weeks felt like chapters in a book Emily hadn't planned to read. She and Ryan met again. Once a week at first, then twice. Always in public, always safe. But each time, the conversation went a little deeper. One afternoon, they walked through the city's sculpture park. The fall air was crisp and golden leaves scattered around them. I used to love painting here, Emily said, pointing toward a quiet bench. Why'd you stop? Ryan asked. I'm not sure, she replied. Life got busy. Or I got tired. Maybe you just forgot you deserved to make time for it. He said. His words stayed with her long after they parted at home. Things with David stayed polite. They weren't fighting, but they weren't connecting either. They shared dinners, but not stories. They slept in the same bed, but miles apart. Emily began noticing things she had ignored before. The way David always chose work over weekends. The way he'd stopped asking her about her day. The way she had stopped waiting for him too. One evening, after a long walk with Ryan, she came home and found David reading on the couch. She paused in the doorway. Do you ever think we stopped being us? She asked softly. David looked up. His eyes didn't hold surprise, just acceptance. Yeah, he said. I think we've both known that for a while. So what are we doing? I don't know, he admitted. Trying, pretending, waiting for something to change. Emily sat beside him. You really don't mind me spending time with Ryan? He paused before answering. No, I think he sees you in a way I forgot how to. That should have hurt, but it didn't. Not completely. Because it was true. One night after a visit to Ryan's studio, something shifted. He showed her his latest work, portraits of strangers full of emotion. Sadness, joy, longing. Each one captured something silent but powerful. She stood in front of one photograph, a woman alone at a train station, eyes full of quiet heartbreak. She looks like she's waiting for someone who's not coming. Emily said, or maybe she already knows they're not. Ryan replied. Emily turned to him. Is that how I look to you? Ryan stepped closer, eyes steady. No, you look like someone trying to remember who she is. Their eyes met, and in that moment everything between them was clear. Unspoken, but understood. They didn't cross the line. But they were standing on it. Emily left without saying much. She didn't sleep that night. Not because she felt guilty, but because for the first time in years, she felt awake. The next morning, David made coffee, and they sat at the table like they always did. But something was different. I think we need to talk, Emily said. David nodded. I know. Neither of them cried. There were no raised voices. Just quiet truth between two people who had stopped being partners long before they realized it. Emily didn't know what would happen next. With her marriage. With Ryan, with herself. But for the first time in a long time, she was ready to stop pretending. And maybe ready to start again? The days after Emily and David's quiet conversation didn't bring any loud decisions, but everything felt different. Their routine remained the same. Coffee in the morning, polite questions, short dinners, but underneath, something had cracked. It wasn't anger or betrayal. It was silence finally being acknowledged. The kind of silence that had lived in their marriage for years. David didn't ask where. Emily was going in the afternoons anymore. And Emily stopped explaining. There was no confrontation. Just space, open and strange. She saw Ryan more often now. Sometimes they walked by the lake. Sometimes they sat in his studio, surrounded by his black and white portraits. He never pushed, never asked for anything more than conversation. But every time she was with him, she felt something that had been missing in her life for too long. Attention, presence, and a strange, peaceful understanding. One afternoon, she found herself laughing, really laughing, at something Ryan said about his dog, who had recently torn up his couch. The sound surprised her. She hadn't heard her own laughter like that in years. Ryan smiled at her, eyes soft. You're beautiful when you forget to hold everything in, he said gently. Emily looked away, heart beating a little too fast. I'm not used to being seen, she said. You've always been seen, he replied. Just not by the right eyes. That night she lay in bed beside David, awake while he slept. She stared at the ceiling, her chest full of questions she wasn't ready to answer. What was she doing? Was she falling for someone else? Could you fall when your heart was still technically taken? Or had she already let go long ago, without even realizing? The next day, she returned to Ryan's studio. The rain had just ended, and the streets outside glistened under the gray Seattle sky. Inside, everything smelled like paint, old wood, and fresh coffee. He was setting up lighting for a shoot, but stopped when he saw her. "I have something to show you," he said. He walked her to the back room, where a new portrait was pinned on the wall. It was a photo of her from their last walk. She hadn't noticed him take it. She stood in profile, hair wind-blown, eyes half closed, with light touching her face just right. "I hope it's okay," he said quickly. "I couldn't help it. You looked like someone remembering herself." Emily stepped closer, breath caught in her throat. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Ryan didn't speak. He just stood there beside her, quiet and still. She turned to him, and for a moment they were inches apart. Her eyes met his. She didn't move away, but she didn't move forward either. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Then she spoke. "I don't know what this is." "Neither do I," he said. "But it feels like something—" Emily looked down. "I'm still married, I know. And I don't want to be the kind of person who—" "You're not," he said, cutting her off gently. Their eyes met again. He reached for her hand but didn't take it, just let his fingers hover, giving her the choice. She didn't take it, not yet. Instead, she stepped back. "I need to think," Ryan nodded. "Of course." That night she painted for the first time in months. A quiet piece, just a face in shadows. No details, no background. But it looked like her, and it looked like she was waking up. The next weekend, David left town for a business trip. Before he left, he paused at the door. "If you need time," he said, "take it. I'll understand." Emily watched him go, feeling both guilt and sadness. He was trying to be kind. Maybe too kind. Maybe too late. With the house quiet, Emily sat in the kitchen for hours, thinking. She thought about the girl she used to be. The one who loved late-night music, spontaneous road trips, painting barefoot in the garage. That girl was gone. But with Ryan, pieces of her had started to return. She texted him the next day. "Want to meet at the park?" Ryan replied immediately. The park was almost empty. A soft wind rustled the leaves, and birds moved quietly through the trees. They walked in silence at first. Then Emily stopped and turned to him. "You make me feel things I thought I lost." Ryan looked at her carefully. "That's not a bad thing." "No, but it's scary." "I know." She paused. "I don't want to hurt David. I don't want you to either." Emily stepped closer. "But I can't keep pretending. Not with him. Not with myself." Ryan looked into her eyes. "So what do you want?" She exhaled slowly. "I want to be honest. Even if it hurts. Even if it changes everything." For the first time, she reached for his hand. And this time, she didn't pull away. He didn't kiss her. They didn't say anything else. They just stood there holding hands, in the middle of a quiet path. It wasn't romantic in the dramatic sense, but it was real. Later that evening, Emily sat on the porch of her house watching the sunset. Her phone buzzed. A message from David. "How are you?" She stared at it for a long time before replying, figuring things out. There was a pause. Then he replied, "Me too." She felt her heart ache, but also, strangely, settle. This wasn't about betrayal. It was about truth. And truth was messy, but necessary. The following week, Emily met with David in the living room. No tension, no coldness, just two people who had shared a life, now sitting with the truth between them. "I think I'm not the same person you married," she said. David gave a sad smile. "I think I'm not either." "I care about you," she continued. "But I don't think we've been happy for a long time." He nodded. "I know." She reached across the table, not to hold his hand, but to offer respect. "I'm sorry. So am I." There were no tears. Just acceptance. Some endings didn't come with drama. Some just arrived. Softly, like the closing of a familiar book. Emily didn't run into Ryan's arms. She didn't rush into anything. She moved slowly, carefully. But she painted again. She laughed again. And she allowed herself to be seen not as a wife or someone's second choice, but as a woman rediscovering her life. Ryan remained patient. He didn't press. He didn't chase. He simply stayed a quiet presence. It's a gentle reminder that not all connections are mistakes. Some are just waiting for the right moment. After the quiet, honest talk with David, Emily felt a strange calm settle over her. It wasn't relief or joy. It was something more complicated. The kind of calm that comes from knowing the truth, even if it's hard. David left for a few days on another business trip. This time, Emily didn't feel lonely. She felt free. Free to think, to breathe, to figure out who she really was without the weight of pretending. She and Ryan kept meeting, but it wasn't rushed or forced. There was no need. They shared their days, their hopes, and their fears in easy conversations over coffee. Long walks and quiet dinners. Ryan was patient with her. He didn't push for more than she was ready to give. And Emily liked that. She liked feeling seen, but on her own terms. One afternoon, Ryan invited her to a photography exhibit he was helping organize. It was small but beautiful portraits of real people caught in moments of truth. As they walked through the gallery, Emily stopped in front of a photograph of a woman standing alone on a cliff, looking out over the ocean. The wind pulled at her hair and dress. "She looks strong," Emily said. Ryan nodded. "And a little scared." Emily smiled softly. "That's how I feel sometimes." Ryan looked at her with understanding. "It's okay to be scared. It means you're alive." That night, Emily went home and sat at her painting desk. She opened her brushes and started to work. This time, the colors were bright and bold. The strokes were confident. She painted a woman standing at a cliff's edge, hair flying in the wind. Eyes full of hope and fear all at once. She didn't think about David or Ryan. She thought about herself. David called her the next day. His voice was quieter than usual. Double quotes, "Emily, can we talk?" "Really? Talk?" She agreed. They met at a small cafe near her house. No pressure, no expectations, just two people trying to understand what was next. "I've been thinking a lot," David said. "About us. About what we want." Emily nodded. "Me too. I don't want to hold you back," he said. "If you need space, time, or something else, I want you to have it." Emily took a deep breath. "I don't know what I need yet." "Neither do I," he replied. "But I want us both to be happy, even if that means apart." It was one of the hardest things Emily had ever heard, but it was also the kindest. They smiled at each other, a smile full of understanding and sadness. They weren't enemies, just two people who had loved, grown apart, and were learning to let go. Emily's relationship with Ryan grew slowly, naturally. They didn't rush into labels or promises. Instead, they shared moments, quiet mornings with coffee, long talks about art and dreams, comfortable silences where words weren't needed. One evening, Ryan took her to a quiet beach just outside the city. The sky was painted with colors of sunset, pinks, oranges, and deep blues. They sat on the sand, watching the waves roll in. Emily felt peaceful in a way she hadn't in years. Ryan turned to her. "I don't want to rush anything," he said, "but I want to be here for you, if you'll let me." She looked at him, her heart full but cautious. "I want that too." They didn't hold hands or make promises that night. They simply sat together, two people finding a new kind of connection. Weeks passed, and Emily felt herself healing. Her conversations with David became easier. They still talked sometimes, checking in, sharing memories with gentle smiles. It wasn't easy, but it was real. One afternoon, David invited her to his new apartment, a fresh start for him. She saw the man he was becoming, quieter, more thoughtful, and accepting of change. Emily realized she was growing too, not just out of her marriage, but into a new version of herself. She wasn't the woman who had felt lost and invisible. She was someone learning to be brave. Ryan surprised her one rainy evening with tickets to a gallery opening downtown. It was a big event, with artists and guests filling the space as they walked through the exhibit. Emily felt nervous but excited. She stopped in front of a large photograph. Her own portrait from Ryan's latest project. The crowd around her admired the photo, a woman with eyes full of stories, pain and hope. Ryan squeezed her hand gently. "You're ready to be seen." Emily smiled, tears in her eyes. She had come so far from the woman who felt invisible in her own life. Later that night, as they left the gallery, Ryan looked at her and said softly, "Whatever happens next, I want you to know I'm here. For you, not to replace the past, but to share the future." Emily felt warmth spread through her. "Thank you," she said, "for being patient, for understanding." We stood together under the city lights, two people ready to face what life would bring, together or apart. One Sunday morning, Emily received a message from David. "I met someone. I want you to know, no matter what, I hope you find happiness." Emily read the words slowly. It felt like a closing chapter and a new beginning all at once. She replied simply, "Thank you. I wish you the same." That afternoon she sat by her window. Painting the sunrise, she thought about love, loss, and the strange, beautiful way life moves forward. Sometimes it asks us to let go. Sometimes it offers a chance to start again. And sometimes it surprises us with kindness, with understanding, with a quiet love that grows slowly but surely. That Emily didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing: she was ready.